come along. We held a similar session to this one last week down at Robertson, and the Robertson shed, they are in the middle of installing it. They're still getting a grant for this bit and a grant for that bit. And for a lot of people who turned up, who I heard the term earlier today, virgin sheds turned up, who haven't been through the process yet. And it was really good for people to see a shed in process of getting to here, because otherwise just walking in and looking at this, it's overwhelming. You know, it's a case of we could never get here, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources, all of that. But to have seen Robertson first and then to see the target, and this really is the target, this is pretty much the premium site that I've seen. Excuse me. We are auto blast gates. There's only a few of us in the business, in fact 3 of us. We don't work outside the men's shed system. I mean, we do sell outside the system, but we work from within the system, and I'll get Rod to comment on this, lots of the bits that we make and sell are actually made in this shed. So we buy componentry from Helensburgh men's shed. And that way we're inside because it suits us as well, because you've got a sympathetic supplier and an involved supplier. When we designed this system, it was to make it absolutely plug and play and incremental. You can start with one gate and automate it. You can have a wheel around 1.5 horsepower dust collector, and it will allow you to automate that. It allows you to grow and grow and grow and grow. Now, I came at it from a different direction. I'm a furniture maker. I make furniture out of Australian red cedar, and at the end of every session, my wrists, my neck and my waistline, I still like to call it a waistline, my waistline, were like raw meat, just from the dust. And I was going to have to stop doing woodwork or find a better way to collect the woodwork. So then I came up with the concept of a gate. Chris was already talking to me about dust collection, and we have another mate, also a mad keen woodworker, who's an electronics wizard. So this is the result of all of that. Now, this is a lathe, saw, thicknesser, whatever you want to think of it as. There's a standard workshop PowerPoint there. We plug it in, we turn it on. Now, because this shed is so automated, every time I do this, that gate there happens to open. But ignore that one. This is the one with Rod's secret device on the front here. So, that's a standard shop PowerPoint. Nothing happened when I used the drill, as I wouldn't expect it to. So then what you can do, you can then plug in, buy this, it plugs in so you don't need a sparky. You can see how sensitive it is. Now what this is the automatic controller. And this, let's turn it off for the moment, this will make sure that, when I plug it in, so this has come out of being plugged into the PowerPoint and now plugged in the automatic controller. Now, there are many sheds, many workshops who've only gone that far, where any machine plugged into that PowerPoint will open that gate, which brings the ductwork to that place. So you're making sure you're taking the dust from the source. There is, however, a stage 2, and Helensburgh men's shed has gone to stage 2. And what stage 2 is, the gate is open, is the dust collector on? So our stage 2 is to automate the process of the dust collector coming on as well. So what happens here is, whenever the gate opens, it flicks this limit switch, which sets this device to turn on your dust collector. So instead of that just being, that's the power supply for disco dusting, you can have your dust collector plugged into there. We have them for single phase, 3 phase, we have them 15 amp single phase, whichever one you want, it's there. However, we do recommend, and did you point out the VFD downstairs?
You did.
Yeah. what we recommend is if you have a three-phase dust collector, in fact if you have a big single-phase dust collector, we recommend you shout yourself a VFD, a variable frequency device. Now VFDs have many advantages. In my own shed, I have a single-phase supply to the shed only. My dust collector's three-phase.
I turned it off.
But the VFD allows me to run a three-phase machine on a single-phase supply. But the other major plus is it gives you speed control, so you can run it from, in my case, 40 hertz up to 60 hertz. I believe, Chris, you're running yours at 70?
No, 70. Yeah,
70 hertz.
I said 65. Yeah, I said 70.
Yeah. So all that means is that you can, in fact, accelerate a process if you've got a particularly heavy load. I do know some sheds who at the end of the day, part of their routine is to turn the VFD up to 70 hertz, having run it at 50 all day, just to give the system a flush through. Just because you can, and it works. Because you all know what it's like if you've got a gate and the dust collector hasn't been working properly. You open the gate and it dumps all the dust back down on where you've just been cleaning it up. So if you do that extra little plunge at the end, you do pick it all up and take it away. So any device plugged into here, in this case my Disco Dusty, will come on. But the device has a number of other benefits. I will try to disconnect that. It also allows you to have your dust collector completely on a remote. So I just turn the dust collector on. I can likewise turn it off. And the other thing as well, built into it, is a timer. And all that means is if you've got a busy shed, and that means the dust collector cycling on, off, on, off, on, off all the time, it's madness. And you hear it more if it just keeps cycling up and cycling down. What this timer does is, it says, right, I'm going to keep the dust collector on for whatever minutes you set here is the time that works best for my shed. Most men's sheds have ended up at 15 minutes, meaning at any stage in a shed within 15 minutes, someone else is going to turn something on. In single user sheds like mine, they are all set to naught. So it only comes on when you're running the machine you're running. So you have a standard power point in the shed. You can plug one of these in, you plug your machines into that and buy a gate. Now, the gates are about $300 with the controller. Ours is being set up such that you can buy up controller and up gate and run it on the machine over there. You don't need anything else. You don't need a Sparky to plug it in for you or anything else. So the whole thing, start at one gate and end at however many you want. The dust collector controller, you'll only ever need one per dust collector, or if you've got two slaved together, you can still have one in there. It also gives you the remote, and it gives you the ability to set the timer. That's about $200 all up. So that's the basis of the system. We make 100 gates and 150 gates, and we try and discourage as many people as we can from designing a system with 100 mil. Now, some machines only have a 100 mil pickup on the machine. Even in my own shed now, I've converted all of my machines. I'm a one-man shop. I've converted all of my machines to a 150 mil exhaust port out of the machine. And on the standard thicknesses, if you remove, for instance, the dust exit port, you'll see there's a 150 by 150 square hole. Put another piece of plywood on, put a 150 flange on it and get it up to 150. The system really does make it safer in the sense that if you've got the world's best dust collector, you've got the wrong pipework, you're not using it, you're not turning it on, it's a garden ornament. That's all the dust collector is. Here you can see a system where you've got the dust collector used properly, fully automated, and I mean, have a look at the shop. Now this is a heavy woodworking shop, and it works. It just plain works. We're doing this, it's a genuine drive to improve the safety of men of our generation in Australia and New Zealand. And this is what we came up with to do it. So the keys are totally incremental, totally plug and play. And these are the basic devices that you can buy from us. You'll need one of those for a system, one of these for each machine. That comes with that, that's your own PowerPoint. Bell mouths. You'll see there's a bell mouth here on every one of these overhead devices, which are normally hung down over the bench when you're working on the bench. And if you just have the end of a pipe at the end of a flexible piece of duct, the total angle of pickup is 90 degrees. That's all you're going to pick up. Anything in that angle is what you pick up. In fact, it's probably less than 90. With the bell mouth, it comes from around here all the way in. It's amazing what a difference such a simple device actually makes. We are selling quite a lot of these. We are selling them loose. We don't just sell them part of a system. We just, anybody who needs these will change. So, general rules. In ductwork layout, we are helping a lot of people to design their own duct layouts, even though it's not our role and we don't charge for it, but we would like to know that you're going to use a system, preferably our system, to make it work. So, all of that, avoid 90 degrees where you can. If you can't, go 245s, or for 150mm stormwater pipe, 150mm sewer pipe fittings, still fitted, and they have a lovely bend, which, Rod, 300mm radius, I think, on the sewer bend?
Yeah, the big one, right over in the corner.
Yeah.
At the window there, I think we had to come in pretty sharp there. There's others there.
So, if you're going with 150, look at the sewer pipe fittings. A piece of advice to men's shed: every men's shed that we've dealt with have gone to their local plumbing supplier, and the local plumbing supplier, whoever they are, is almost universally giving them cost plus 5%, cost plus 10%, which is about half the price if you pick them up at Bunnings. So that's basically the system. One really important thing as well, can't see an easy one to do here. Although we've got the system completely automated here, the new design controller, and this is the Mark V controller, has this, which is a manual override. You don't need to start a machine at all to open the gate. Now the thing there is, if like the thickness over here, if you have a fitting where you can plug it on, like one of those dust right fittings you get from Harbortech or anything else, you can in fact turn on, open the gate. You can see I've turned the very inefficient dust collector on. You can then use that pipe to clean up the machine, and the machine ain't running. Because normally every other way you do it, you'd have the machine running to have the dust on. So this switch allows you to override it. Some people don't want that, because that means it is possible to leave a gate on and all the rest of it. So there is the possibility of having a lock switch on the bottom so you can lock that function out. Then what you do then is, the session manager has a remote on their key fob. They can turn the dust collector on anytime from anywhere, and they have the key to open that. So if you need to, some guy says, if I want to clean up, I've made a mess, you can start the dust collector, open the override and clean it up. Sorry.
Sometimes the detector unit's mounted up in the ceiling.
Yes.
So how do you use the override?
What we're doing, and we did this for Robertson, it came up, if you see here, this is connected obviously to that gate. I got them originally to put the PowerPoints all up there, so they just clamber up, put this in and do it all up. What we've now got is a chain and a metal bracket here, and the Mark V gate hangs right here. So you can reach the override. Now, one other control on the function on the controller which is new, there's a delay switch here, and there's a choice of 4 and 8 seconds. If you've got the last machine on the run, you might just leave that on 8 seconds, so that when you stop the machine, it's 8 seconds before that closes. So it just gives you that extra time to clear all the ductwork out between you and the dust collector as well. So that's it. It's as simple as that. To show you our street credibility as well, the plywood and the laminate, that's not melamine, that's proper heavy duty kitchen type laminate. That's made for us in Queensland. The CNC cutting is done in Queensland. The only thing you can see here that we have to buy from overseas is the linear actuator on the gate.
Sawdust comes in two types, visible and invisible. The visible stuff is not the dangerous stuff. It's physically dangerous if you get a mess, but you can pick it up with a shovel. It's the invisible stuff that we've tried to capture. Once you get under 5 microns in dust size, it basically goes into your lungs and stays there, and it don't come out. And as Alan alluded to, because we're older, we're more susceptible to that problem. So here, for instance, they've got asthmatics that work in this shed. Before that went in, the asthmatics had to leave the shed because they couldn't tolerate the dust levels. So yeah, it's the invisible stuff, and it's the invisible stuff that needs to be collected at the machine. Now, again, as Alan alluded to, that's 150 and that's 100. And you can see the difference. Doesn't sound a lot. That will flow 750 cubic feet a minute, which isn't enough. And that'll flow around about 1200, which is just adequate, which is good. I reckon 1000 is minimum, but 1200. So yeah, by setting up the machines and setting up the ports properly, you will get a large part of the invisible dust. You won't get it all, but you'll get most of it. I prefer a cyclone for one reason and one reason only. You dump it into a hard container, you can pull the hard container out, put a lid on it, put another one under it. You haven't had to put respirators and PPE on to handle the dust. If you've got a bag system, well, you know problems. You've got to clean the bags up, empty the bags. It becomes, you're working in a hazardous environment, basically. Ducting, don't glue it, don't even need tape, just put it up there. It's going to change. The law of workshops and sheds means that ducting will change eventually. And being PVC, you can just put some screws at the joints if you want, as it does here. Some people have been concerned about static electricity. Not something I've run up against in my personal shed. The ducting is up, screwed to a metal roof internally. So it does ground, but the common thinking is you can't earth an insulator, and that's an insulator. Another thing about ducting, you'll notice the 45 here is horizontal to the ground, not vertical. Don't put them in with the drop vertical, because if that branch isn't used a lot, any passing dust will drop into the vertical. T sections are verboten because they just kill flow. They just don't work. The flow, a bare cut-off pipe will not flow as much air as with the bell mouth hang on. The bell mouth increases the actual capacity of the entry into the duct. It lifts the performance of that quite a bit. Closed cabinets, bandsaws, they're a problem because they're a closed cabinet. Now you can't extract air from a closed cabinet unless there's the same amount of air going into the cabinet. So if it's closed and sealed and you turn on dust extractor, you're not going to get anything out of it. So something like bandsaw, and that's most probably about the only machine that it applies to.
Some cabinet saws,
Oh yeah,
pretty much so.
they need an air entry in to feed the air entry out, feed the exhaust out.
Can I say something, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
With the assembly, we found it's very hard to get a long length of pipe in. You have to get a hammer and bang it.
Yeah.
If you put a mark in, so on the pipe, that's how far it's got to go in. Get some washing up detergent in a wet rag and just wipe it around and just like that.
Yeah, but I just want to show you the party trick. These are for those work situations, and we were talking earlier about Robertson not having enough air, or thinking they didn't. This is what your air pickup should look like. Now the problem with this demonstration is I only ever do it in sheds that have good systems. It's bloody hard to find sawdust. You have to go searching for a bin with it. So I can probably do this by turning this on, which is inadvertently turning the system on. They were trying to suck an empty Coke can from that far, it wouldn't quite.
That's the video I've got here if anybody wants to see it.
You'd like to have a look at the video, but it was really quite funny because they didn't want to confess to everybody else in the shed that their impeller was running the wrong way. Someone dropped them into it. So that's what good duck pickup looks like. You can also see there, that hesitation to pick it up. The reason for that is, going back to Chris's seam cabinet, there was no air coming from the other side.
The 16-inch and 17-inch of bells require 225 main ducting through the for everything else to hang off. So you've got to run a 225 duct, which ain't cheap, to get the 150s off it. Multiple 150s will work at once. That's probably up to 3, and maybe in this shed 4, but on the max 3 anyway. Yeah. The only thing is,
You've got to
for
really.
good blast gate operation, it's got to be straight in both axes. It's got to be horizontally level right through, and vertically. It's got to be, So if you had it horizontally but it dropped, it would put a load on any blast gate, and it's got to be put in pretty good. Coronel were the first ones to do it 9 years ago. I supplied them with the cyclone. They built theirs on the floor and lifted it, I guess in modules, and Robertson did the same thing. Robertson laid it out using tape on the floor and built the extraction system on the floor basically, and then put it in the air.
We got ours, Rod drew ours, he was AutoCAD and drew it,
Yeah.
all to scale. And we cut it and assembled it in the air.
And
Yeah.
it's the difference, I think the difference, what you're talking about there is too, is that you already had a shed that was going, whereas Robertson was a brand new shed.